right?
Yep.
Jerry?
That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay, good evening or good afternoon, everyone. It's 5 o'clock, so we will get today's meeting started, Monday, June 11th, 2018. And to get us started, if we could have a volunteer commissioner read the mission statement for us. Who would like to do that? Ryan?
Yeah, I was gonna volunteer anyway.
I was sensing that.
Yeah. The mission of the Palm Springs Human Rights Commission is to promote and protect the diversity of our community and to improve human relations through education and community awareness.
Beautiful. And to throw a little twist in for roll call, today, if we could do self-introductions, and we'll start on this side of the table, and we'll go all the way around.
Jyoska Chandrasena.
Terry Andrade.
David Morgan.
Nikki Randolph.
Sam Sherallo.
Jim Gross.
Ryan Machio.
Sorry. Do you want to help me since I
Denise
didn't have a
Chappelle,
program?
yes.
Thank you.
And Ron DeHart.
And Dale Cook, staff liaison.
Beautiful. So we have a full house. Thank you and congratulations, everybody. This is great. So now we move into public comments. So any person who wishes to speak on a topic within the city's jurisdiction during this portion of the agenda must file the speaker card with the staff liaison before that portion of the agenda is called. 3 minutes are allocated per speaker. Although the commission values comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. Commissioners will not enter into discussion with speakers, but during commission comments may refer the matter to staff for report and recommendation at a future commission meeting. And so far, we've got 3 speakers. First up is Suzanne Severin.
Hello, distinguished commission. I'm very happy to be here today. And I'm actually here as a member of the Harvey Milk Diversity Breakfast Coalition and as a resident of Palm Springs. And as a member of that breakfast committee, I'd like to thank you very much for your participation last month in the breakfast. It was, I think, by far our most successful. We had almost 1,000 people at the convention center. We're bursting at the seams for next year. So thank you for your support. But as a resident, I also want to say to you that I was very proud to see you there. I think it's important that the work that you do, that the community sees you at events like that. It was very meaningful to me to have my Human Rights Commission at an important event that supports and educates the public on civil rights. So thank you, and thank you, Vice Chair Chappelle, for your involvement. And I hope we see you next year. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And next up, we have Robert Heinball.
Commissioners, thank you for your time. My husband and I just completed a 7,000-mile driving trip across the country. And on more than one occasion, we thought about you. And one particular event was brought to our attention when we came out of the Dallas Art Museum. And there was a large park, and there was this cacophony that drew our attention to the park. And we got over there, and it was an event called Volley in the Park. Volley was a nickname for volunteers. There were 75 organizations brought together by the Volunteer Now organization, and it was any organization that you could think of that was needing volunteers. And you walked around from booth to booth to booth, and each organization was explaining what their purpose was and afforded you free gifts if you were willing to sign up, or cold water, which you needed. It was 104 degrees and 204% humidity. And we walked around, and it was just absolutely an incredible experience. 75 different organizations, ran the gamut of everything from tutoring to assisted facilities, HIV awareness, the whole bit like that. We finished and we started walking away, and I said to Paul, I said, this is something Human Rights Commission in Palm Springs could do. I grabbed this brochure, and this is all I had to bring back to you other than what's in my head. And I would encourage you to explore doing something like this. It was wonderful. It was an incredible experience. So Dale, I pass that to you, and you can do with it what you want. Thank you for your time and your interest.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. You were really thinking about us on the trip because it was 104 degrees, right? You were thinking you were at home.
Cooler back here than
Yeah,
it was there.
it's a
I'm
wet
sure
dish.
you-
And next up, we've got Paul Hendrickson.
Good afternoon, Commission.
Welcome.
Good to see you again. And yes, we really did think about all of you. You're our friends and neighbors here in Palm Springs. It was a terrific event, I must say, and very well attended, what Bob was talking about. So I just wanted to touch on that. And because we were traveling, we missed the last month's HRC meeting. And prior to that, we were talking about getting from a resolution of support for the tobacco retailers permit. And there is a little bit of an update. Two of our council members, Coors and Holstedge,
It's all
that
right.
was
I
a
didn't
quick
push the
2
right button.
minutes.
I didn't push the right
That's
button.
okay. They're taking it up and having a special study, ad hoc committee on smoking restrictions here in Palm Springs. So we're looking forward to working with them and also continuing to request and get a resolution of support and from the Human Rights Commission on this topic, and as it goes further into a wider reach of city ordinances on smoking bans. And I believe it also plays in well with one of the projects that you have coming up, which is the Seniors Bill of Rights, because one of the things seniors need, especially as it says on the agenda, dependent seniors need, is a safe and healthy environment. And secondhand smoke is a real threat, not just the obvious that people think of, which is cancer, but secondhand smoke can cause strokes and heart attacks, instant onset, especially in people who have reduced immune systems, which is also common among elderly as well as the very young. So I'd like you to consider that component also to your Seniors Bill of Rights. And we look forward to working with you further on a resolution of support for the tobacco retailers permit here in Palm Springs. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And if you've got any data that can back up the link to the seniors and non-smoking, if you have that and can provide it to Dale, would appreciate that.
Glad to do so.
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we've got Brad Furr.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Welcome.
Well, I want to say thank you from a different side of where I was last time in the City Hall chambers when I received my award. And again, I wanted to thank each and every one of you for bestowing that award upon me. And if you remember, I told you that day that I was starting a new organization called Gay for Good. And that organization is now up and running. And our first community service project happened to be the Harvey Milk Diversity Breakfast. And that being that the Gay for Good organization nationally every year takes on a Harvey Milk project around the country. So every chapter around the United States does some project related to Harvey Milk Day. And in our case, it was the Harvey Milk Diversity Breakfast. So that was our first project. And we had a number of volunteers help with both the setup and teardown of that event. And the reason I'm coming to you today is to bring this all back to your support of the Harvey Milk Diversity Breakfast. I think it's very important. When I look at your mission to promote and protect the diversity and to improve human relations through education and community awareness, I really can't think of anything that does a better job than bringing these students together. These students that have been ostracized in their schools and in their personal lives. Many can't even be shown in photographs, in social media posts, because they may get in trouble with their parents or with family members or with other students. And so bringing these students together for the Harvey Milk Diversity Breakfast is, I think, really an important step for them. It really gives them a sense of the place in history that Harvey Milk had, but also it gives them hope in terms of where they can see themselves in the future. Every year we have just wonderful speakers, people who have done great things in the LGBTQ community. And so I think it's just important that, that your support continue for the Harvey Milk Diversity Breakfast. I wanted to say thank you for that, and thanks for all that you do for human rights in Palm Springs.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, now we move into, thank you to all the speakers. Now we move into our commissioner, staff, and student comments. Since our student rep is not here, we can move straight into commissioner comments, and we'll start with Commissioner Sandra Sina and work our way around.
Okay, I don't have anything at this moment.
Okay?
I just want to maybe put it out there that we've had these gentlemen come and speak about the smoking for quite a few of our commission meetings. I just want to know what we are able to do as far as, I know we can present legislation to the city council, but it seems to be a consistent theme. Is there something that we should be doing? I mean, what kind of support? I feel bad that we sit here and we listen, but we don't necessarily have the resources, or there's not a certain, I mean, I know we're talking about table talk and getting ideas and feedback from the community. I just feel bad that we're not acting. We're just listening, but we're not acting. Is there something that we should be doing?
Yeah, and I think this is the second time that we've had the comments at the commission meeting, right? So I think now that there's a ad hoc committee that has been formed at council level, perhaps somebody from our commission might want to be a liaison to that committee and reach out to, is it Councilmember Coors and Holstage? So they're the council members assigned to that committee. So if we have a liaison to that committee, we can learn what's happening at the council level and figure out what else can we do to assist. But that's a good point. Good way for us to get involved, I think. Yeah. Commissioner Morgan, anything else?
That's it, thank you.
We could always rely on a good comment from you, so thank you. Commissioner Randolph.
I have a couple items, but I think they're more appropriate later in the program, so I'll pass my time for now.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually do have a comment today. I wanted to wish everybody a happy Pride Month. We celebrate Pride here because it's in November, but Stonewall occurred in June, and gosh, nobody would come in 106-degree weather. So that totally makes sense. But I wanted to wish everybody here and in the community a happy Pride Month. My first Pride was back in 1975 in San Francisco. And the next year I formed a Democratic club in San Jose and was part of the group who formed the first Gay and Lesbian Pride in San Jose, which is now known as Silicon Valley. And in reflecting back on that, I think that if you would have asked me then if we would, so many years later, be able to legally marry in the United States, if we would have gay and lesbian elected officials at the local, state, and national level, and that we would have a number of different journalists who were on TV that we could actually choose from to watch, I think I would have said probably, yeah. But that wasn't our fight then. Our fight was to gain equality. And I think that fight still continues. And I think that in addition to all the things that we've accomplished, that our community has accomplished, that there is still much more to go. Integration is always good and segregation is never bad. I think that as we move, though, towards becoming integrated into the larger community, that we don't want to lose sight of who we are and where we came from. And I think that Commissioner Randolph will be speaking on that later today. But we don't want to lose sight of where we were and where we came from, because it's only if we remember that we're able to move forward together. I think it really speaks to the strength, persistence, and of our community that we accomplished these things even while we were dealing with the very serious health crisis that affected our community. And I could not be prouder to be a gay person today. And I would just want my younger gay and lesbian brothers and sisters to remember that you need to understand the history of our community back beyond 1970, back in the 1950s, and even earlier than that, the Mattachine Society in New York and those sorts of folks, in order to really move forward. And I just think that the more that we are out there and the more that we engage with people and show them who we really are, that things will just become better for us in the future. And I was fortunate enough, one more comment, I was fortunate enough to teach a high school class in San Diego, public speaking, which is what I do, this last semester. And I have to tell you that just teaching those folks, they were brilliant, generous, bright. It was my pleasure and honor to do that, to help them find their voice in society. So and that experience really helped me come out of that experience with the real sense that we're going to be we're going to be well taken care of by the next generation, the generation after ours, the 15 and 16-year-olds now. So I really have hope, and I think that that's what Harvey Milk wanted to make sure that we maintained, I just am real proud of being able to celebrate Gay Pride with everyone today, and thank you.
Excellent comments on Pride Month, thank you. But for public record, I think we should correct your statement on integration good and segregation
is never good.
Very good.
Yes, if I said the opposite, yeah, there we go.
It came out the opposite.
A different way. Thank you for doing that. Yes.
Commissioner Gross.
Good catch.
Okay, well, I think I have one thing that's worth adding to this party for Pride Month. I spent Sunday with a lot of the kids that were at the Harvey Milk Breakfast, not all of them, but a good portion of them, who are moving into leadership positions at their various GSAs. This is the Safe Schools Leadership Camp that occurs each summer. And boy, the inspiration things you just talked about is definitely there, I can say, in my experience, in spades. The engagement I witnessed, and witnessed even more strongly this year at camp, is stronger than ever. I would also say, and I think this represents part of our challenge in the very broadest sense, as LGBT kids, the story's been told many times, and it's still true, about the bullying and the difficulties and everything else. But this year in particular, what I noticed, and it's a reflection of the culture we're in, is much higher levels of anxiety and fear. And both specifically, I noticed in some of the younger kids who, about half the kids are graduating and moving on to the next chapter, be it higher education, whatever, but the other half are still coming through. And there's definitely could feel that kind of overwhelm. So I just want to underscore that. But the good news is that I do think, fortunately for our community here, through our various organizations, Pride, Safe Schools, the Center, DAP, and of course I'm probably forgetting most of them, but those are the ones that come to mind, is we're doing a good job of that. But I think there is something there thematically we will want to keep in the back of our minds as we go through this year, and that is the safety factor. And certainly, we saw that with the march here in Palm Springs, how top of mind, and we're going to do some recognition, I think, later today on that very component, but just wanted to pop that into the toaster of Pride Month, along with the other slices, and
excellent. Well, I think that's great. Never too old to go to summer camp, so that's wonderful.
If you give me one last sentence on that, the camp where it's at is Camp Edwards. It's the YMCA camp for Redlands, and I may even get a little teary on this, but my name is carved in the wall of the dining hall from 1961.
And who did that?
My dad. Oh, we got fathers. I mean, kind of having my my little moments there. Anyway, enough of that. We're in a public meeting, but probably worth color. Anyway.
Beautiful. Commissioner Michio.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, a thank you to the two commissioners for making those comments. I think it's very important, and I also look forward to, as my new role here on the commission, finding some students again with Commissioner Morgan and others to get involved so that we can provide some mentorship and engagement to them, and we can learn from them as well. If you hadn't called on me, I was going to volunteer to read the mission statement anyway, because that's what I wanted to make a comment about, and it's really a question, I suppose. And that is, are we able to edit and revise this slightly to maybe add some more to it? As I've been sitting here for the last few months at these meetings, I've looked at it a lot, and I've thought about the work that we're doing and that we aspire to do, and I think that we might have an opportunity to add a couple of words that might just give it a little bit more impact based on what we're trying to do. So,
I can't imagine why we wouldn't be able to. Dale, do you see any reason?
I think that would be an excellent topic for the retreat.
Okay.
We can
very good.
drill
'Cause
down
I'm
further.
happy to jot some things down and give it to everyone as a suggestion and then
Yeah.
talk about it somehow.
Beautiful.
So, okay.
Make notes and we'll speak about it at the retreat.
Thank you, sir.
Beautiful.
And I don't have any thing all on, though I do appreciate all of your history and your experiences. That brings us back to why we do what we do, because our work isn't over. So, thank you.
Yes, beautiful. And to echo, further echo the comments that have been shared, I think it's also important to acknowledge that beyond the LGBT community specifically, we've got to work in tandem and recognize the diversity in our community and the allies that are there, specifically during Pride Month, to recognize the allies that are supportive of the LGBT movement and equality for all individuals and all citizens within the city. So we want to recognize and say cheers and thank you to those strong allies that stand up and have a voice in our community. Dale had mentioned the retreat. At the last meeting, we suggested that maybe we don't do the retreat until the new commissioners come on board. Council has voted to extend all commissioner terms until the end of December. So that means we won't have anybody coming on board until January or February. So we really need to go forward and have our retreat, our planning meeting, or day of conversation, whatever you want to call it. And I'd like to suggest that maybe we figure out a date to do that in July, and maybe the July meeting date. Since we won't be able to have this room, it's going to be under remodeling, and we'll have to find another meeting place. So we could either find another meeting place or cancel our July meeting and in turn have our retreat, which doesn't have to be televised and wouldn't need to be in this room. We can find any place to do that. And if we don't have any pressing items in our agenda for July, it may be a good time, since it's already on everybody's calendar, to hold that July meeting date as our retreat date. Any thoughts?
Are we still dark in August?
Yes.
Well, for me, I will be in San Francisco that day. It's my only bad dates in July are the 12th through the 16th.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Did we have a conversation at some point about having an entire day or half day as a retreat as opposed to just a meeting?
We didn't get into it. We were just talking about the idea of holding the retreat.
I found our retreat the last time we had, first of all, rather short, and second of all, kind of sterile, because I think it was here. Was it here? Someplace not fun. And so if it's appropriate, I offer my home. If I can fit 9 or 10 people in there, and it's comfortable. So if that's appropriate, I offer that.
And I do think that in years past, we spent quite a few hours, but in these last few years, it's been shortened, and I don't think that allows us to really get going.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, and I mean, this is discussion we probably should have later, but you may cancel your meeting, but it should still be accessible for the general public. So in a private home, it leaves some limitations. So we can look at scheduling and survey the membership to see what is best, and maybe have the subcommittee work on the type of agenda.
Yeah. So everybody in agreement with that? So we'll pick a date in July. So we'll work on getting a date and move forward on the other specifics. Okay, beautiful. The other items is thank you to our Vice Chair, Chappelle, for her role in the Harvey Milk Breakfast and representing the Human Rights Commission at that, on that platform. It's a great way to create visibility for the commission, and I appreciate your willingness to be there and be a part of it, so thank you. And to the commissioners who were able to attend, thank you for taking part, and Dale, thank you for being there. It was great to see the representation. Last item for me is a new community leadership council has formed and met for the first time last month. 40 people in attendance representing 28 different organizations. So it's a great first meeting for our community to bring together our nonprofit organizations to address common goals and issues and raise awareness for the challenges that individual organizations may be facing in the community. So it's nice to see that is off to a good start, and we may want to think about having representation on that leadership council in the future.
Ron, I have a question for you on that. What is the organizing entity that's bringing the nonprofits together under this umbrella?
So it's the conveners are Desert Business Association and Palm Springs Pride. They were just the convening organizations, but the point of the Leadership Council is it is a council of all nonprofit organizations who want to participate. It just so happens the conveners were the Desert Business Association and Pride.
Yeah, I'm glad it's happening.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, that's it for me on comments. So now we've got to move into.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Jay has.
Oh, Jay, I'm sorry. Welcome, Jay. Appreciate your being here.
Thank you. Pardon my tardiness. Just wanted to let everyone know that at the last council meeting, the city council approved opting for the 100% carbon-free energy option for Desert Cities Energy, which is part of the new community choice aggregation that's going to be rolled out in August. So that's coming our way. And the second item is that Commissioner Holstage, Councilmember Holstage, who attended the Harvey Milk Breakfast, was very appreciative and a little distraught that it ate up half the commission's budget. So something to think about.
And she issued a challenge to help find funding to the council, I believe, didn't she?
Not quite yet, but
well, that was what she brought forward, was
Okay.
bringing up the point of how important it is to be involved, but the significance of the 50% cut of the budget to make it happen. When you have a $2,000 budget, that's a big deal. So we appreciate Councilmember Holstage's comments. Dale, did you have anything? Okay, sorry about that. Now we can go on to item 6, presentations and our community recognition. So to continue our work in recognizing folks in the community on an ongoing basis and not just once a year in February when we have our community awards in the council chambers, we had set out to recognize students who were involved in the March for Our Lives rally that took place on March 24th. Across the country, actually around the world. So the commission today would like to continue that recognition. We've got 2 more students with us to recognize for their involvement. So we would like to thank 2 student organizers, Melina Solis and Jack Weaver, both from Palm Springs High School, who are with us with their parents today. And they are both organizers who participated with others in putting together the rally and protest that took place in Palm Springs. We're excited about the leadership that they displayed and their ability to work toward creating a platform to have the youth voice be heard and recognized in the community. So their actions and leadership have elevated gun control as a key issue, and they've inspired a generation of peers to register and to vote. The students brought great credit to the youth in our community, to the Palm Springs High School, and to the city of Palm Springs. So today, the Human Rights Commission will be presenting a special commendation to both Melina and Jack, and we'll have and a special certificate of recognition from the City Council signed by Jeff Coors. Councilmember Coors. So we'll have a photograph, and then we'll ask both students. They'll have an opportunity to make a few comments if they like, but we'll break real quick so we can take a photograph and presentation of the plaques. Oh, sweet, okay. Let's do it up against the blue this time. We couldn't get, and we have a full house today, so we need plenty of extra room. No, here, let's get all the commissioners. Yeah, we'll come stand forward. There we go, and come backward. There we go, perfect. All right, and actually, it's somebody's 18th birthday, I've been told. So we're celebrating Melina's birthday. Yay. She gets to vote. She's a registered voter. So we've got a new voter in the city. So today we recognize the leadership that Melina displayed in her role in helping to plan the March for Our Lives rally in Palm Springs. So Melina, here's the plaque from the commission and your certificate from the city council. Thank you. Excellent. So we'll take a picture. Okay, beautiful. And same with Jack. Jack, we appreciate your involvement and leadership. And there's the plaque from the city, or the Human Rights Commission, and the certificate from Councilmember Coors. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay, beautiful. Would you like to sit at the chair and just make a few comments? You have to be here because the microphone needs to capture your comments, okay? So Melina, we'll have your opportunity to make a few comments, and then Jack will get you second, okay?
Am I good?
Go ahead.
All right. I'd like to thank the commission for recognizing us because I think it is very important to acknowledge the fact that there are younger leaders trying to make a difference in the world even before we are able to vote. This was how we were able to have our voices heard and to get middle school students all across the valley and through social media that we have students across the globe to participate in politics before we can legally change things with a vote. So I'd like to thank you guys for this opportunity.
Beautiful, thank you, and thanks for being here. We appreciate it. And Jack Weaver.
I would like to echo what she said and thank you all for recognizing the both of us. And it was a really amazing experience to be involved in such a movement and to be at the forefront of it. And I think that this is a really important and could be a changing time if we continue to press forward. So I hope we continue to do so, and I hope the Human Rights Commission helps in that effort, and thank you for having me here.
Beautiful, thank you. So we appreciate both of you for being here and for your actions and being involved. We want to encourage you to continue to display your leadership, continue to help other youth be empowered to stand up and to have a voice. We're in a transformational time right now with youth engagement in the community, and we appreciate your leadership in working to raising that voice and having an impact. So thank you. And now we go on, or we move into item number 7, our guest speaker who is with us today, continuing our series of community stakeholders presenting information and briefing the commission as we move down the road to putting together a proposal or a comments, suggestion to City Council for whether it's a senior Bill of Rights, policy, or ordinance, whatever we may be doing. So we welcome the CEO of Jewish Family Service of the Desert, Maureen Foreman. So welcome, Maureen.
Thank you very much. Regarding the Senior Bill of Rights, that's the first thing that just pops into my head the minute you say that. That is one of our largest focuses at JFS. We are going to see over 1,000 low-income seniors at risk for homelessness before the end of this fiscal year. Thanks to City of Palm Springs for helping us with that. Other funders help us with that. About a third of them are in Palm Springs, sometimes up to 40, depending on which year. We have had couples living. We had two gentlemen who had been married for 20 years living in their car, and we helped them find housing. We had a married couple. Both of them were sleeping in tents out in Desert Hot Springs and got shot by gang members, 2 women. So the reason I'm telling these sort of like eye-popping stories is that the low income, we are one of, first of all, the highest senior populations in the state. We are 48% seniors. The rest of the state is 33. Huge difference. A. B, 77% of the seniors in California are in what they call extreme stress for rental to income. In other words, meaning they are spending over a half of their rent on income. We have seniors who make $900 a month. They are everywhere. They are in every city. They are Latino. They are black. They are white. They are Jewish. They are gay. They are straight. So part of what our biggest thrust has been, and I gave you a little packet of things that I put together, but we put together the Senior Collaborative because we realized that there are so many agencies down here that work with seniors, and that the poor senior is given a list of agencies to call when they need help. Well, that won't do because they're in stress and they don't have time to call 10 agencies. So our Senior Collaborative meets every month. We've been meeting for 2 years. The list, this is expanded. We actually have more people on it now. We put together an Excel spreadsheet every month, our liaison does, of who's got money for rent, who's got money for electricity, who's got money for whatever we need, so that we call it no wrong door. No matter who the senior calls, they're going to get somebody and say, oh yeah, JFS has it, Salvation Army has it, Catholic Charities has it, Senior Advocates of the Desert. So the reason we're doing that is because we're long past the point where individual nonprofits can be the senior nonprofit down here. That just can't continue. And I'm very biased. I was a medical social worker for about 30 years at JFS and at Eisenhower. And so I know how siloing affects seniors in crisis. So part of what I would love to see on a Senior Bill of Rights is a couple of things. That there is really, our emergency funding at this point is all through fundraising or through pass-through grants or CDBG grants, things like that. But I really think that emergency funding is, I don't want to say it's like FEMA, but it kind of is. It like needs to be part of some sort of city budget that's like really built in. I guess the other piece about seniors that we see is that the low-income housing, there's a 2-year wait for most of it. You can't wait 2 years if you're living in your car. Path of Life Ministries is doing a fabulous job working with CVAG to get people into shelter. But there's this weird gap where, what do you do in this in-between thing? One of the ways we fill the gap, JFS focuses on preventing senior homelessness to begin with. And what we do through we have socialization programs in 7 locations, and we go all over the place talking about everything all the time. And one of the things we say is to the landlords, please don't let them get to eviction. Please give them our number. Please give them our number. Because once they're at eviction, a couple of things happen. Legal fees are getting slapped on them. We had a woman who got a $200 legal fee and then a $300 legal fee. She only made $1,100 a month. How is she ever going to get out of that? Okay? And those are at subsidized housing down here. So in terms of a human bill of rights, we would love to see some sort of legislation that says, hey, if you are receiving funds from either the city, the county, or the state, you don't get to slap legal funds on a low-income senior without some sort of process there, because they get so buried they can't get out. So that's really the big thing. The other piece in terms of letting the rest of the valley know, we know about these seniors. We work with the health academies. We're working at Palm Springs High. Oh, they left. Palm Springs High, Cathedral City High, and we're looking at Rancho Mirage as well right now. They are helping us over the summer to run our socialization programs to get their community service hours. Why? They're going to see low-income fixed seniors. They're going to learn about a geriatric depression scale. They're going to learn about a behavioral health career. So it just has a full range of services. So what we're trying to do is really build that intergenerational compassion between the younger generation and the seniors, because the seniors become invisible. They lose their ability to drive, and they're in their little apartments, and that's it. Nobody even knows they're there. So we are going to expand that as rapidly as possible to get our young folks interested in that. So those are the things I really wanted to let you know about. Please call us. Dale does all the time. If you run into somebody, and I would really encourage you to put it to the forefront of the human or the Senior Bill of Rights, that eviction has to be addressed in some way down here. So that's it. Any questions or?
Can you expand on the eviction issue that you're saying that it needs to be addressed specifically?
So for example, there are certain low-income senior, some apartment complexes are terrific, some aren't. Some are owned by larger corporations in Orange County, and they just have a legal thing that they start. So you're 3 days late, there's a late fee. You're 5 days late, they start legal proceedings. Well, the senior pays for the legal proceedings. They start billing the senior. Well, on fixed income, they can't ever catch up. So we're helping them, trying to do. So we're either going to. So what we'll do, for instance, is call them and say, stop, don't do that. We're going to help them. We're going to get them this month, or we're going to get their utility or whatever. Don't start the legal fees. So I think that on fixed income, a lot of these apartments, and I wish I knew more about it, but I don't. Receive funding. They receive county funding. They receive federal funding. They should not be able to just slap 500 legal fees on a low-income senior without letting someone know, maybe an ombudsman, or I don't know exactly what the form would take, but we see it all the time. And so, and we would love to work with them, and we'd love to work on whatever committee there is that comes up with it, because once they're out, it's really rough. Keeping them there is like gold.
Excellent, thank you. So, any other questions from?
Question. What are the reasons for an eviction of a senior in a apartment building where they're subsidized, and typically the rent is predicated on their income?
So, for example, you'll have someone who has like a $900 a month Social Security check. They have, $270 or $300 a month rent. They'll get a medication that isn't on their formulary because their Medicare Advantage plan changed the formulary. They can change it every month if they want to, but the senior only can change insurance once a year. So, for instance, they'll get a medication they can't afford. They will, their car will break down. It's an expense that they didn't expect. Their refrigerator breaks. So there's no wiggle room when an expense comes up. They don't have savings. So they don't pay their rent because they had to get the dentures, or they had to. So we're always trying to get dentures, eyeglasses, utility, anything we can, so that the money keeps going to the rent.
Right.
So that's usually what it is. It's an unexpected expense.
Okay. So one time, maybe?
It's usually a one-time
thing.
If it's not a one-time, then what we do is we work with them budgeting to say, okay, even this low income, you really can't even afford this. So what do? You know, we can put you on SNAP. We can get you on the CARES program. We can get you, sometimes they're still on a PPO. Insurance will talk to them about an HMO. That'll save you some money. So we'll work, our case managers will work through the budget with them.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think one of the things that you mentioned that was critically important at the beginning of your remarks was the fact that as we craft the document that we present to council, one of the things that we have to avoid is giving folks a wide variety of places to go without having any direction of where to go, or even having some sort of advocate that can go to those places on their behalf. Right. And so we might want to, as we're thinking of what we present to council, we might want to include that there needs to be some sort of guidance or advocacy on behalf of seniors who want to access the services that are out there, but for one reason or another can't call 10 or 15 different agencies. So that is an area that we might be able to be instrumental in whatever we recommend to the city council, and we should consider that particular portion as we move forward, I think.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
Just a suggestion. I don't know whether this is possible, but now we see such a boom of seniors moving into our communities, and it's going to get only more. And I do deal with them too every day. Is there a way that the city can levy some kind of a portion of, like a tax on a senior who moves in, so that services can be provided, that they can have visits from social workers, because these people are alone, and even I do have so many clients from Palm Springs in this area. Nobody visits them. They have dementia. They have all these things happening, and it's a burden on the city. So I think the city needs to put into place something when these people move in, and that they also provide some kind of fee to the city, so that they will, at a later date, be able to get something out of that. Is that possible?
That's an interesting idea. Part of what we always talk about is that we see it as a public health issue. It's really a public health issue. In other words, you've got vulnerable seniors who are either physically ill or losing their cognitive abilities. And if it were typhoid or scarlet fever, they'd be all out there trying to find them. And the problem is, whatever the silver tsunami thing, that there's so many of the baby boomers who are aging into poverty. It has not been addressed as a real public health issue that has to be, cities have to have a pot or something for that, because they end up choking up the ERs. They come into the ERs all the time. And so it's really cost effective to have home monitoring, to have any kind of, they have in-home support services through the county, but by the time you get on there, but the old-fashioned, visiting social worker, visiting nursey kind, I hate to call it the UK or England, but they have that type of system where you get visits when you're certainly, to make sure you're okay. And I really think that might be critical.
Any other, Jim?
Yeah, I'll just add a brief supporting comment, because I think we're all really sensitive to it, given the topic of suicide being so much in the culture. The other thing, in my much more limited experience than yours with the senior community, but oftentimes, it's been in the press a lot, loneliness may be the biggest culprit in terms of debilitating seniors. It saps, from what I'm understanding, and I'm glad to see you nodding, I'm getting good information, but it really restricts their ability to move
Well,
forward with their
cognitive
lives.
impairment actually goes, they get increasingly cognitively impaired. That's why
Right.
our social, we bring things twice a month to these senior apartments, to anything,
Yeah.
your hair done, art, speakers from the Indian museum, whatever. Because the stimulation, literally without it, it feeds the depression.
Yeah, and the
the
suicide
cognitive
rates are
function.
up on seniors, is what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also addressing this, the depression, and there's also with eye diseases, you have this thing called Charles Bonnet syndrome, and I have so many cases. And our police force are not educated with the mental health part of it, where when your brain is not at sync with your eyes, so you start hallucinating. And I had a client of mine who was actually removed from the home because the family called the police. They couldn't deal with the Charles Bonnet syndrome. So that happens at an acuity of 200, 220. So again, we have to keep educating our populations, our elder populations, on these things that are happening to them, and which we don't do.
So I have a question on, you mentioned it would be a dream, an emergency funding to have some kind of ordinance or some kind of funding from the city's behalf. What does that look like? What's that funding amount look like?
Oh, amount? $50 million? No,
That's all?
and yeah, 20, I don't know. We work with the CDBG grant on such, I don't want to say small levels because we're extremely grateful, but
It is small level, we realize that.
but we get 15,000 here and 10,000 here, and so this year we will give out about 65,000, and we're going to serve around 1,000, 1,100. So, and those are usually around $200, between $200, $200. They're not big amounts, so sometimes they're bigger, sometimes. So I don't know if you wanted to figure the aged population times $250 or, what that amount would look like. I don't know that, I haven't done that math, but I know we as one agency we're at 63,000 right now in one fiscal year. So, and we're one agency. And Chris O'Hanlon, he does it. Office on Aging does it. I mean, it's, so, I think it might be interesting. We could certainly, at our senior collaborative, compile the amount of actual direct funding that we've given out.
Any idea how many people are turned away? How many of the is it 200 a month? How many people might you see in a month how many is beyond that you can't assist?
Well, sometimes it's because we've already helped them, and we can only help them once a year, or otherwise we would burn through it all much faster. So they can get turned away for that. They can get turned away. I don't think many do, because we refer them to other people who can help them. But like a lot of our pass-through grants will be primarily for seniors, and only 10% can be below 55. And so we'll have to just use that 10% of that, whatever. So it depends which grant. We have all these different grants and this matrix of who can get what out of what grant. And I don't think it's a large, I would say it's less than probably 5% that we turn away. We try not to turn away any, because we also have our fundraising. That's what we call our general, that we take out of our fundraising. And if they don't fit in any category, they go there. So.
Okay, thank you. So another item, you had mentioned some kind of a program, and I didn't write it down, linking youth to seniors, or educating youth about, what is the name of that?
So, well, we have a Let's Do Lunch program that's in 7 locations. We call it Let's Do Lunch. It's a socialization program that is twice a month. We're at Jocelyn Center, Cathedral City Center. We're at one of the assisted livings at Atria, and then the rest are apartments. What we're doing is, rather than having our older volunteers run those programs, we are recruiting younger volunteers from the high school who need their community service hours. It does 2 things. I'm on the behavioral health alignment team with One Future Coachella Valley, of trying to train therapists, which is another thing we need down here. So what we're trying to figure out is how do people even know what the problems are down here if the high school students don't see them? So it's one of our things that we're trying to do is get them to really understand social service problems in the area that they live. So this is the first summer that we're going to have Palm Springs, and we're going to have Cathedral City running with obviously we'll be there too, running 2 of our programs, and administering geriatric depression scales, scoring them. We have a clinician there to actually interpret them, but to understand senior depression, how it's related to poverty, really start a social service core knowledge.
Beautiful. Any other questions?
I have a question. I'm reminded from my time working in corporate America, we ran an employee relief fund, and employees could payroll deduct a couple of dollars a month to the fund, and those that were in distress or crisis could apply for a grant from this fund. And so the question that comes to mind is, would the commission be prohibited from establishing some sort of Palm Springs Citizen Relief Fund where we would solicit money from citizens for citizens, and there could be some parameters established on how to apply for a small grant from this fund, and whether it's our commission or a coalition of city commissioners or staff people would review such requests and then issue grants in times of need. Would there be anything that would prohibit us from doing that, staff members?
Something I believe is already in the works.
Okay.
It's called the Love Fund. It's a fund that the city of Palm Springs wanted to create for contributions to particular projects, parks, facilities. I think what I would suggest is maybe recommending a category for contribution that would address these issues in the Love Fund. And then community-wide, where the Love Fund will be broadcast and promoted, people can choose the either Senior Bill of Rights, senior efforts, homelessness prevention, something like that as the category to be invested in with that fund.
Who's the liaison with the city? Is that Harriet?
That's Harriet.
Okay. Beautiful. Excellent idea. Good suggestion. Any other questions? I have one last question on, Maureen, you talked about legislation that could help stop legal fees before they start, or creating a process of the landlord required to inform an ombudsman or somebody. Are you aware of where that is in play anywhere? That type of program?
No, but I will look for it and send it to you.
Yeah, if you find
it.
example of a city where they're doing something like that would be great for us to learn from.
That's a great idea.
I believe there's 2 cities that have legislation that are organizing a pro bono network of attorneys for situations just like that, where evictions are occurring and there's not enough, and you really rely on some legal representation. Might be Newark, New Jersey is one of them. So.
Yeah, to me, if it were in some way connected to receiving public funding, federal funding or county funding, that if you are doing low-income senior housing, that there is at least one other step you have to take. That's how I picture it. But I'll look.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you. If there's no other questions?
For clarification of that, we have referred individuals to Desert Legal Aid to assist with that process. But many of these agents, many of these apartments have layer of funding and it has their own requirements. And it may be something that has to be taken at the state level with the tenants' process of evictions. So it may not be at our level.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do much more research.
Okay. Excellent. Well, Maureen, we appreciate you being here, and thank you for your insight.
Thank you very much for letting me come. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for all you do. We appreciate that.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, now we move on to items for discussion. Master calendar, any items that we need to be aware of, Commissioner Sandrasino?
No, we don't have anything on our calendar for the rest of the year.
Okay. Subcommittee reports.
Wait, excuse me. So there's 2 items I'd like to consider adding to the calendar if we can take a moment and discuss them. One is back to your point, Dale, of we can have the retreat at my house, but if you would give me a date, there's 2 places that come to mind that are public and that would be nice places to have it. The Arrive Hotel now has an event space. It's lovely, it's private, but it could be open to the public, plenty of parking. Or the bank, which is next to my office down on South Palm Canyon. I'd be willing to approach them and say, gratis, may we have our retreat there. Would that meet the criteria? Okay, but I would need a date. So we're just saying July for now, right?
Yes, we'll have to pick a date that we all are here,
Yeah.
that Jim is here.
Can we do that
Me too.
now?
Me too.
Why not? Yeah,
So the only dates that you can't do it are,
yeah, the dates I cannot do it are the 12th through, one second. Oh, sorry. The only dates that I can, in July, that I cannot attend a retreat would be July 12 through 16. Starting the 17th, I'm back in business here in Palm Springs.
Might I also suggest that we could possibly approach the center? They have a lot of meeting space there. It's not glamorous, such as the Arrive Hotel. I mean, it doesn't have a pool, but I'm sure that they would be interested in possibly donating room space for us for the day.
they do charge, but the other one would be Trio. He's got meeting space, a new meeting space. So, the way that we're going to make this work effectively is we'll do a doodle on the meeting. So, Jim, the only dates you were restricted were
12 through 16.
Okay.
And can I just add that I will be having to be at Loma Linda, our grandson is scheduled to perhaps arrive the week of the 23rd, and so I will have to be there if he can stay put that long.
I will not be here from the 15th to the 30th.
15 to 30?
Yes.
Okay.
My birthday's the 12th.
Thank you, Nikki.
The 11th is looking great.
Okay, all right, well, we'll do a doodle, and if you could reply to that as soon as possible, and then
great.
we'll coordinate with Dale and figure out what we're gonna do, and then if you can reach out on meeting space, then that we can all connect, and it
Of
will be
course.
perfect.
I have a
Okay?
second item
Yes.
that I'd like to. So I handed out a press release to everyone about this 1-hour television program. A gentleman in San Francisco some time ago left his estate and gave the instructions, please document the history of coming out by the decade. So this gentleman named Phil Siegel started the process, and first he had young people asked older people, what was it like to come out in the 1950s? Then he did the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Now he's condensed it down into a 1-hour program. And it's particularly good because the young people, I happen to be in the one in the 60s, late 60s. And the young person who asked me, he said, I have 2 moms, and I want to know what it was like for you to come out during that time. So it's a really educational, but also an interesting, a cross-generational type thing. You can see it online. I can show it to you. And it's going to be on PBS during Pride Month in June. But he gave me, Mr. Siegel, gave me permission to use it for our commission as a fundraiser. So I'm working on that, but I need input. First of all, is it okay with everyone? And secondly, I'm going to need a little bit of help. I'm trying to meet some deadlines that Ron gave me so that we can get the promotional aspect out. If, for example, the Camelot Theater gives me the right to do it, they have their biggest theater, 600 and something seats, just for, say we charge $10 and we sold it out. Gee, our financial problems are solved, at least for the first year. So I'm very excited about this. I hope the rest of the commission can get on board, but I'd like to have some input, and I'd like to have a date so that I can approach the theaters in town and say, we need it now. October 11th is coming out, National Coming Out Day, so that would be a thought. Or we can do it just prior, per Ron's suggestion, prior to Palm Springs November Gay Pride weekend. So I'm open. What date shall we do it, or should we do it?
Comments?
Well, I particularly like it around October 11th because of the subject of it, and I think that gives us enough time to coordinate some promotion of it.
Are you going to look at the theater donating the space in the venue?
Yes, if they'll call me back.
Because the Well in the Desert just did a movie fundraiser there, and we got the smaller of the theaters, and it wasn't free. We had to have it underwritten, so we might have to do that.
Well, we'll see. I can talk to the Regal. I can talk to Palm Springs High School. I mean, there's many places. This, because it's already done, it's on a DVD, so you can pretty much show it anywhere. It's all self-contained.
Okay.
And if it's a fundraiser for us, I mean, I think certainly we have I don't know. We'll see. I need to talk to someone with authority there.
I'm thinking of properties that the city owns. Would the convention center be an appropriate place to do this?
Not free deal?
No.
No, it's not free.
What?
And we're at a point that you're beginning to make decisions, and the item has not been agendized. I mean, we can move forward in trying to gather more information. The commission has sponsored films in the past, the homeless program that we did. It was viewed at the library. There was no admission, but not even donation. I think that would be the angle you would want to, as Jay had said earlier about the Love Fund, or working with our Director of Development Resources and how we structure it. We've not gone down this path, but to make sure that we're appropriate in how we move forward. There's different venues that you're speaking of. So, I mean, I think you've got to do a lot more work before the commission can make a final decision, but I think what you're asking is for guidance and direction and interest that we move forward. We don't have the details today.
So I think we can give you direction, and you can continue to gather all the details and go forward. This sounds like we've got support from the commission, and bring it on the agenda for September to vote, and have it on the agenda so it can be formally approved. But between now and then, the legwork can be done. And I do, there is a great connection with Coming Out Day. The idea was conceived at the Rose Restaurant in Los Angeles with Gene O'Leary, and that restaurant was owned by a Palm Springs resident, Pam Giornovino. So there's a great little local connection there. So I love the idea of actually doing it on Coming Out Day. And I'm not aware of other activities celebrating Coming Out Day in town.
Well, this is my frustration is, everything takes time, and I understand there's rules, but I'm handcuffed. We have no date. I've got permission to do the film, And now we have to wait another month
No,
to
I
discuss it.
think what I'm suggesting is there's no opposition from the commission, so let's go forward and put plans in place. We will vote on the issue in September.
Why are we waiting until September, though?
There's no meeting.
Next month?
Yeah, we're dark.
August anyway, no meeting, and then we have retreat.
Yeah.
There's a meeting in July, but it's going to be a retreat, right?
Well, but.
It's still a business meeting.
But because of this, do we hold a July meeting?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what you could
For a
possibly
vote.
do,
Right.
in the
Not
past,
the planning.
we've not conducted business during your retreat.
Right.
However, you can convene
Right.
and have actions
And then to the
taken,
retreat.
and then move into the retreat. Because I think that is going to be necessary for.
And we did do that last year, I believe, or the year before. We held we held a short meeting, and then we went in.
Year before last, possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to frustrate you. I mean, you've shared, working in some other venues of homeless, affordable housing and the like. But when we have these brilliant ideas, there is a process. And we do need to come together and, vet it and be able to make sure that we're not putting the city in any liability. And it is a process. Of course.
So you're saying that we can email you prior to a meeting? So like last week, we could have emailed you and said, can you put something on the agenda, and therefore it would be quote unquote official, and we could have voted on it? Is that?
You would not have been able to do it last week. We sent out the draft 3 weeks ago,
So-
weeks ago, and we internally review it with the chairs, the vice chair, and then it even goes through an internal process for approval.
So like 3 weeks prior is like a cutoff?
At the best, at
Okay.
the best, yes. Yeah.
So since we're on master calendar, and since Nikki needs a date, and since the consensus is that October 11th would probably be the most appropriate date, let's go ahead and make the motion that we have this fundraiser that we add it to the master calendar for October 11th, with the details to be brought at the July meeting to be voted on by the commission. And that's a motion.
I mean, I will not to be an objection to it, but I think all you're asking now is for direction. I think you're going to have to come forward with the entire proposal program and how every piece falls into place. I mean, I appreciate you wanting to move things forward, but I don't think you actually need the formal motion to do that, to give direction for more research and to come back in July.
Yeah. I'll proceed with the idea of the October 11th date, because I can't talk to the theaters or venues until I say, could we have use of your theater on a specific date? And then I'll have a more firm, plan to come.
And then it's placed on the agenda for July.
And we'd handle that prior to going into our retreat, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But just so that you have initial direction as far as a date to ask these people for, I think the consensus is October 11th, right?
Yeah.
So we can decide that in the context, I think, of the master calendar. We're putting something on the calendar with everything else, but with everything else to come at the next meeting. Make sense?
Well, that does, and the other thing I was thinking too is, can't this be broken into two pieces? I mean, for one, could we not take action sooner rather than later on affirming the date as the planned date, and then later affirm the program? Because I totally resonate with your frustration on that. It's impossible, in my experience, and I've had some experience, to even really start with this type of program unless there is some level, and it's not always 100%. I realize maybe we can't make an absolute commitment, but I have a pretty good idea what the date's going to be. Just world doesn't turn, and my world doesn't
So
turn.
because there's no opposition to the date, Nikki's got some marching orders to move forward.
Right.
And
Okay.
So the motion on the floor is withdrawn or dies of lack of second.
Mhm.
And thank you, Nikki, for pursuing it, and continue working, get details together. It's on the agenda for July.
Great,
And we'll
thank
move
you.
forward on it.
Thanks.
Okay, calendar, we're done on calendar. Now we're on to community outreach and marketing. Who would like to give that update? Or is there an update?
Of course there is. So the community outreach and marketing, the big thing that we've been working on, of course, is Table Talk. We have 2 more dates, one of which is tomorrow for the Highlands community. I think there's a few of us that said we can attend, which is fantastic. We had a lively poker game yesterday with some women and some who may have been lesbians. And then we have one more that's the very last one scheduled, which is Thursday, July 19th at the American Legion. So after that, we'll have pretty much everything tallied up, not official again, not, all prim and proper, but we'll have something we'll be able to present to the entire commission. One thing about our what is it called? Not our camp. What were we doing?
Retreat?
Retreat. If we choose it after the 19th, we could probably have some statistics, very unofficial statistics, and be kind of fun for all of us to kind of delve in to just this raw, data from the public that we can kind of decide where we want to go in the next year. If there's any kind of, I promise I have not looked at anything. I purposely not, because I didn't want to come to a meeting and start talking about it. I've left it locked up in my filing cabinet so no one looks at it. But that's just a thought or consideration if we want to hold a meeting after we have the very last table talk, and maybe we might see something in there that's interesting.
And table talks begin at what time?
Oh, it depends. Like the next one for tomorrow night, it's at 7 o'clock at the Highlands Community Center.
And then one at
So
the
if you guys are
Legion?
able to go, and then American Legion on Thursday, July 19th, that should be a lot of fun, 4 to 6. I've
Thank
heard
you.
it's quite the salty bunch that's out there.
Okay, thank you.
So be prepared.
Also on the marketing committee, so our guest speaker last month, who was talking about the Social Security cards and preventing fraud with those, was very kind, and he sent me over 100 brochures, which we can put in our marketing box, and we can hand out freely because it's happening now to anybody who comes to our table talks, or if anyone else is representing the commission somewhere. We have more stuff in the box now.
Beautiful.
Can I ask a question about marketing? Has there ever been a commission newsletter that goes out to citizens?
Not that I'm aware of. Dale, do you?
Not specifically commission itself. There is a city newsletter, and it had been on a quarterly schedule. I'm not certain where we are in that route, but in that time frame, the commission would have an opportunity if they wish to contribute an article to the, so that's
To the city's
something-
newsletter?
Yes.
Okay. I just think that there's some important information that is shared with us in these meetings, and there's a limited audience in person, and I don't know how many people go home and watch us on public television after, but it seems like a lot of stuff that is shared with us, it would be good to amplify to, our citizens. So I'm just curious.
Sweet. Can we task the Community Outreach and Marketing Committee to bring that up as a topic when you have your meeting with Amy Blaisdell? Is Blaisdell? Yes. Because that meeting hasn't happened yet, right?
It was last week,
It did happen?
but it didn't happen.
Yeah. So if we, let's put that on one of the topics to have a conversation with her about. What are the deadlines, what are the requirements, length, number of words, that, all that nuts and bolts, so we can figure out what we can include. Okay, beautiful.
Yeah, just one thing I'll add to that, the other communication channel that can be open, and it's shifted a little bit now. I'm kind of wearing my 1PS hat here, but I think it ties in better right here. 1PS does a lot of communication to the community as a whole, and now has a very well-developed, and it's taken a long time, and now it's good, communication process. So costs nothing, but to be sure that the flow of communication goes into 1PS for their own updates, that's really a powerful thing. So, and I'm glad to, by the way, be a conduit for such things. So,
Sweet. Okay, Finance Committee.
We haven't met yet, but I want to get clarification on the budget. So for the next year, it's already been decided, correct? And did I just hear you say it's half of what it was?
No.
Oh, good.
The clarification was that during the council's budget discussion, Councilmember Hostage brought up that half of the Human Rights Commission budget is a sponsorship of the Harvey Milk Diversity Breakfast. So she was encouraging her colleagues that to consider the possibility, if there are funds, to increase the Human Rights Commission budget. There was no overwhelming direction to say that, oh, we found some additional funds, but it would be a vehicle for next year. So the coming year, July 1, you still have a $2,000 budget.
Okay.
So in next year's budget discussions, which typically begin in February or March, that may be something that we would want to begin to make some inroads.
And I'm optimistic, even though I know I'm lacking in following the rules, but that we can fundraise. I mean, this could raise thousands of dollars for our commission. Then we won't have to be so concerned about what we spend our minuscule $2,000 budget on. If I may comment on the Harvey Milk Diversity Breakfast, I was there, and it was fantastic. It was just a really moving, the speakers, the participation of the students, the participation of the city council. It was just very inspiring and really a wonderful event. With that being said, at our table, it was not full. Partly because some commissioners had other organizations. So and per the gentleman's comments there, I would prefer, if we're going to sponsor it, and part of the sponsorship is that we get a table, that we donate that to students, and we, the commissioners, if we want to go, we pay our own way. That would be my suggestion on it. You know, I think it is a good branding tool. It is good for us to be there. But if the justification is so we can sit down and eat a breakfast, it doesn't seem appropriate to spend that kind of money. Anyhow, those are my thoughts.
And those are from the Finance Committee. Let me clarify too, this year being the first year where the city has made the opportunity of donations and contributions received, I have been told that those items are restricted and they will carry forward to the coming year. So what I've done is use our city budget funds to exhaust those. So we will have a surplus that will move forward, and we'll keep that. So, I mean, I appreciate your opinion, but this will have to be a discussion later in an actual formal vote. So, yeah.
So you said that the money that we have left this year, the money that we have left this year is going to continue?
Only the restricted donations. So individuals who have made donations through the year, those funds will remain up to the point of the $2,000. Now, we've had some expenses, and we typically exhaust the $2,000, so we may bite into the restricted funds, but whatever unexpended restricted funds, they'll be surplus and move forward in the coming fiscal year.
So I just put before the commission that, you know, I think if you don't ask, you don't get. And I know some people will probably be a little flustered when I say this. If we don't have anything to plan, or we're not creating something, if it's a big marketing plan or what have you, we have a consistent $2,000 every year. But if we wanted to do something big, there's no reason why we can't create something. And I'm sure if it's something good, if it's something that, you know, gets people motivated and excited, that why not? If we're going to talk about things that are retreat, I mean, I don't think we should just think $2,000. We should think, what do we want to do? What do we need to do? And how do we get it funded? Nikki has mentioned at several different meetings that she's done fundraising. Let's put her on it. Let's just get her started and say we're going to do event A, Y, B, C, whatever it is. And I think the challenge for us is not just to think, well, we don't have money for it, but this is what we're going to do. This is what's going to be exciting. This is what's going to benefit the community. Now let's find out how to pay for it.
Yeah, I also very much agree with your comments, David. I think that is our way forward. But Dale, what I'm glad to hear it, but I was kind of amazed because I know I've asked, and first I've heard about it. You mentioned that donations that are specifically designated would carry over. I've never, even though I've asked, been informed of how donations could be made to the commission for its activities. Is there a program in place for that?
Just go online.
There is.
A few months ago, we brought that farm forward, and the program has really evolved. And it now has been more formalized, and it is online, it's available. And in past, if a contribution was made to a department or rentals of a facility, those went into the general fund, and they weren't carried forward. They were extinguished. But with the effort and trying to solicit more contributions and support of the community, those unrestricted funds of sorts would remain for the use of that activity. So it's very, and I mean, there are a number of opportunities that individuals in the community can provide.
Well, I'm glad to be reminded. That's good to know, and I'm glad to be refreshed. I'm sorry I missed the first time. Then my question becomes: do those donations flow into the Palm Springs Foundation and are subject to the fiscal policies of the Palm Springs Foundation?
That's what is still being worked out.
Okay.
When the director of fund development or development resources came on board, there was a restriction on how they were accounted within our system, and those have been fine-tuned, and it's moving forward to almost be a separate entity. But those are remains for the use of the intent that the donor had made.
Well, I find that all real positive. Keep the information flowing, though, because I think you hear, at least I know from me and I'm hearing from other commissioners, there's real interest in trying to develop those resources for their purposes.
Beautiful. Anything else on finance? Okay, beautiful. Student representatives, I know we've got a lot of action on that front.
So we've had a lot of outreach. Originally, we were recommended to speak to a person at the school district who recommended that we speak to a vice principal at the Palm Springs High School. That vice principal at the high school started talking to some students and getting them excited. We had a meeting planned. The students were not able to make the meeting, and the person who actually had organized it was not able to attend either. A long story short, the principal of the high school felt a little bit left out. I certainly understand that, but the principal already had some people chosen that he wanted us to select as the student commissioner. I think before us now, what we have to decide is exactly what process do we want to use to have a student commissioner. One thing that I was just speaking to another commissioner earlier about is that we can say what we want, but it's still going to be chosen by a certain person. So how do we get the word out to the students at the school, this is what we're doing, and who's interested, we want to talk to you? Because I think right now, as it is, we just have a principal that's going to pretty much choose a student or a couple students, but it's not really the wide swath of people that are at the school that might be interested, such as the ones that we actually spoke to. By the way, off the cuff, we spoke to a Spanish Honor Society. They had no idea what we were there for. They didn't know anything about the Human Rights Commission, but there were a few of them that were interested. So I think if we were able to just be able to communicate, maybe it's something with our own PR department for the City Hall that we can communicate, that it's more official. I'm just worried that if we don't have an official form of communicating with the students, it's only going to be for a select few, and it's not going to be the group of people that we necessarily want to interview. So if we can decide what is the process that we want to use, how do we circumvent just a chosen person? I'm up for ideas.
So I think we're waiting for, or we're inviting the subcommittee to bring us a proposal on what our program should be. So once we see that proposal, then the commission can vote to support the committee's recommendation.
Well, I'm at a loss for words as far as like, how do I communicate with the student body at the school? Because I did try to do that, and then it was kind of shot down. So how do I move forward without people's hands being tied and not being able to talk to those original people. There apparently was a group of students from the Black Student Union, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know where those students went, and now how do I reach them?
Sure. So when's at the next meeting, I can make it a point to attend so I can be part of the conversation and maybe help get
But
some
that's the whole
guidance.
point. We don't have a meeting because the original people.
No, subcommittee. Our subcommittee should
Oh,
be able to
okay.
meet at any time. So when the subcommittee meets again, I'm happy to join that meeting, and we'll figure out what next steps might be good to then bring back to the commission to get full support, at a meeting.
And I'm willing to join too because I have some ideas about it
Yeah, okay.
that I'm willing to share.
And just so we can take action on this at the next meeting, can we agendize this? Can we put this on the agenda for action?
Yeah.
If it's coming out of committee, do we have to have a specific agenda item? Because we don't have a plan yet.
I would think that once you have a plan, you may want to formalize it. To clarify too, it isn't a commissioner. It's not a commission member of the Human Rights Commission. As commissioners, you go through the internal city process and you are interviewed by council. Council makes recommendation of appointments. There is no formal process for student representatives. So if it seems to be a challenge to have the school to recognize the effort, is there a way that we could solicit this membership, the student membership, and run an ad in the student paper and request applications, and the commission members would review those applications? And that's separate from the city's process. This is your own process. And if the school district or the high school, the principal on-site supervision doesn't want us there, then we can do it outside the process, if that would be beneficial.
And I think that that's the challenge that has been had, and I think that because things are being changed up, there isn't a real good understanding. Why aren't you just going to do it the way that it's always been done? And that, I think, is the challenges that have been had. And we have talked about an application. I really like the idea of just come up with the application and give it to, I don't have any idea if they have a student paper there, but they have a counseling office where they could be laid out with a box.
I think even email.
Right, exactly, because everybody's going paperless. So that's a real good point. So if the committee can get together perhaps before we come together in July, at the end of June, which I think I'm part of that committee still, that then we could come up with a plan. You're exactly correct in saying that it's okay to say this is how we're going to proceed.
So we are going to put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and I think we can move forward, but we'll hash it out in committee and bring it to commission for approval. So we'll put it on the agenda for July.
Possible for us to schedule a time today before we go?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, great.
Yep, I think that's excellent. Okay, Senior Expo.
Yeah, okay, I think I reported last time that we were going to postpone the expo into the fall, and we actually do have a date in the fall. Amazing we could get that far. Anyway, October 23, so Jilska, that's a big master calendar thing. That will be the new date we're planning towards for the Senior Expo. Other logistics remain the same. We'll be at Mizell Center. It'll be preceded with breakfast, I believe starting at 8:30 with the program starting at 9. So we'll be moving ahead with the marketing and the publicity and everything here over the summer and getting that ready so we can kick that off with a bang. And The other thing I would bring up as well, I was tempted to raise this earlier as various points came up, but I thought, no, it's okay, we will get this done first. But the tie-in is this. We have also, within planning for that, we've discussed, because the whole idea of the Senior Expo is to do this one-stop shopping that our presenter from Jewish Family Services, Maureen, talked about, at least get it started. So there is now some discussion, and I'm just putting this out here so you can develop your own thoughts and maybe feed those to me at the retreat or in the right forum about how we want this to be a continuing effort beyond just the one-shot program. And the thought that does keep arising, and the word was used today earlier, is ombudsperson or ombudsman. And I mean, right now it's just the general thought. It needs a lot of fleshing out in terms of the specifics of what does an ombudsman mean in this environment, and how would that be square, blah, 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 blah. But that it resonates there in the planning for the Senior Expo, and we've heard it as being a need elsewhere, that there really needs to be some way to work across the silos. So I think that'll be the important benefit of that day, and hopefully sets the stage to move that forward. And I think that's it for now. The most important thing we wanted to do was to get it moved and to get the date set in the fall, so now we do have that. Thanks for your help. Yeah, we do have council member calendars checked. Ron, I don't know if you saw in a couple of the emails I sent around the calendaring, I mentioned you to check with the police department. So
Yeah, they're good.
They're good? Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, then that takes care of that one. I'm out of gas on this topic, unless somebody has some questions or observations. Or
What about funding? Are we not contributing anything to?
Well, I'm kind of stuck there too. That's why I kind of respond the way with Nikki. I don't know what to say. This came up.
Well, is there money that didn't get spent before the fiscal year end? We don't have $10. We're done.
Well, here's where things.
We're zeroed out.
What it was pretty close. I shared with the finance. I didn't bring the.
Is there any money left?
Well, I mean, there's
the unrestricted or the restricted money.
There is some that's carrying forward.
Yeah. So not counting that money that we would lose. We've exhausted it. Okay.
Well, the last, at least on the planning side of this, there was Ginny joined one of our meetings, and when this topic came up, Ginny said, Ginny Fote, yeah, for the record. And so Ginny said, well, she was going to pursue that as well, also with her contacts in the city. Because the point there is, and it's true, Mizell is carrying the bulk of the expense on this. And the sense in the planning committee is that the joint project isn't there some joint responsibility there. So that's what's going on with that. I have not heard from Ginny what she's done or if she's done anything with that. But I do think it's a wide open question. Because right now, I don't know what to do about. For instance, we know that in the publicity program, we not only want English language materials, we also want Spanish. We also want to be sure that we have sign language interpretation at the event. We have these things, they're important to this commission, have been important commission topics. And Mizell does not have the budget for that. And and I pretty much got tossed to me, and I've reported back to that planning committee what I've heard here, which is that basically there is next to no money available in the commission's budget for this, which is when Jenny said that she would then have her discussion. So
Okay.
I don't, that's where it is, and I've just also kind of gotten, well, okay, we're trying. But I don't know where else to go to get the specifics we need to really put the full plan together. In this case, it's the budget plan.
Well, I
more than
think
the-
the realization is there's no money left in the budget for this year, so
Yeah.
we'll wait until we move forward to see if there's an ask coming back to the commission to contribute a certain dollar amount. So you can work with the committee, the planning group.
I can, but you see, I just mentioned I could do it very quickly and easily, and glad to do it. What I don't know is where to get information, how much does it cost for a sign language?
$80 an hour, just figure out how many hours you need.
Okay. And separately, we can figure out, and I know nobody here at the table know, but we can figure out, and we can put a budget number on doing the Spanish language, and also any of the other things. So yeah, if that's an invitation to bring such a request here, that's great.
Yeah,
feel
well,
very
I think
welcome.
we need to address it, and we're going to get too far behind the curve
Yeah,
if we're
I agree.
talking October 23. So we're going to run into some of the other challenges
Mhm.
that Nikki was addressing earlier.
Yeah.
So, okay, so if you stay ahead of it, then we'll be able to address it in the July meeting.
In the July meeting, okay, and that's
So do
very
we
helpful
need it-
right
Do
there.
we need it to be on the calendar to be able to vote on it?
If you want, it can be, and if you need a formal vote, it has to be an agenda.
Okay, so we're going to agendize Senior Expo for the next meeting, okay?
Okay.
Beautiful, thank you.
Ron, before you move on, you skipped housing, I believe.
Oh my
and,
gosh, how did
Terry
I
and
do
I
that?
were there,
Okay.
and I would like Terry to have an opportunity.
so we'll go
to Give her
backwards.
impressions.
Non-intentional, Housing Commissioner Andrade and Randolph.
We did attend that meeting, and it was a very informative meeting. Jay was there. It wasn't good news. It was actually, there's not a lot of money. There's not a lot of programs that are left to develop. There's not, the land is an issue. Developers are an issue. The competition factor is an issue. The NIMBYism is an issue. I mean, they're stacked with reasons why things are not being developed. I did want to say, and I don't know if it's appropriate in this about this, but just linking with what Maureen said about evictions, I see that preventing evictions, whether it's seniors or families or any segment of the population, really factors into the housing piece. Because if someone loses their home, and even if they do or don't wind up with legal fees associated with it, if they didn't have the money to pay that rent, they certainly don't have the money to move someplace and start all over again. So I think that prevention is really critical, and I don't know if it's something that this commission would be interested in, especially in developing a revised mission statement if we want to add advocacy to it. I don't think that we could probably take on the prevention itself, but I do think that we could let people know that there are ways to prevent them being put on the street, sort of a thing. Do you know what I'm talking about? We wouldn't, whether it's a referral or whatever, I think it's such a daunting process, the eviction process, that people get the notice, and it's not unusual that they just file it. It's like, I don't know what to do. I don't understand it. I don't know what my rights are. I don't know if I even have any rights. I don't know what the timing is around it, that type of thing. So I really think that maybe there's a role for this commission in trying to do what Maureen was talking about, to at least let people know that there is something that can be done. But do it early. Do it really early in the process. If we could talk to a landlord and say, this guy's $45 short on his rent this month, maybe we could work something out with the landlord where they're not evicted and they don't start that process. I don't know. Maybe it's wishful thinking on my part, but I do think there's a role for this organization in that piece.
Would it be appropriate while we have our planning heads on in this next month to kind of think about coming together, because we've talked about having these evenings that are educational, and possibly inviting a panel to come to some place like the library. And of course, you couldn't charge for a piece like that because you want people to be there, and to have a panel of people, Chris possibly. The people that we have heard to have at least their paperwork there too, for people to come by and collect, because there is a large population too in the evening in the library in the colder times till it closes.
Sure, yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask or add on to that is that I think what Commissioner Andrade is talking about would fit really well with the part of our mission that is to mediate. I don't know how we would go about doing that, but I think helping to solve the problem or helping to facilitate communication between a landlord and a tenant who is facing eviction and facing notices would fit really well with the mediation mission that we already have. So that portion might fit well, and that's something we might want to discuss at the retreat. But you know how I feel about mediation. I think that's a really important thing that we can do that we really haven't had a whole lot of activity on recently. So maybe this is something that would be a good use of that mission. Or
I
be
think it
appropriate
has
there.
a stronger chance for results than trying to stop a landlord from being able to collect legal fees or to pass legal fees on to the consumer, because most of that is contractual and you're not going to probably be too successful at doing that. And like you said, Dale, state law is a big piece of it and that type of thing. But to be able to help people just at the point where they get that notice and they don't know what to do with it, and just be able to tell them this is what's going to happen, if it's just educational. But it might be just a resource and referral thing. But it might also, like you said, be a phone call to the landlord and say, hey, we're advocating for this person. What can you do to help us, get them another month or something?
And that while
like
that wouldn't be, while we couldn't put that on staff, that would not be a
Right.
proper thing for staff to do.
Exactly.
We can perhaps train commissioners to be mediators in that for that particular reason. And for those of us who want to do that, that might be an appropriate thing for us to do.
Right.
Dale, did you have a comment?
Oh, most definitely. Folks, we intended for this year to have a focus. We can't do everything for everyone. If you have this desire, there are resources. The Fair Housing Council of Riverside County, the Path of Life Ministries. We can go through resources and I can share those and we can be able to facilitate those. But you're not going to be able to be with the client and walk them through the process. Even our mediation program, there's only a couple of you that have the certification. The mediation program requires each party to be willing to participate in. You're probably not going to get a landlord. The Path of Life Ministry, they are looking at the prevention of homelessness. They have resources for rapid rehousing.
Right.
Those are the connections that we need to give. But I wouldn't be hopeless in saying that there's nothing out there. You've got a very strong council that wants to do something in affordable housing. And it's going to take some willpower. We can encourage it, we can support it, we can push it up, but it's not at our level.
And it's going to take some time. I mean, by the time we are looking at getting bricks and mortar to build something or to create a project, you could have easily saved maybe 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 people from being evicted. And if it was just, I'm not suggesting that we have the expertise to be the people that do that, but I mean, maybe just the opportunity that Maureen said, that a lot of times you don't even know about the person getting the notice. You don't even know that they've been served. Because they're not in a position to tell you about it or to call one of these organizations, kind of a thing. So I understand it's certainly not in place of, but it might just be a little bit of prevention that we could look at, especially in the senior rights community.
I just wanted to make a really brief comment of going to that meeting. Even I realized when, this might be a bigger problem or the wheels are already turning on this. First of all, it seemed to me that what I thought of as affordable housing was not the definition everyone else was talking about. So it's a broad range, not just what I'm going, well, where are the police officers and the teachers and the hotel workers going to live? So that was my being naive. So it was a very educational process to be there. But what I did learn is that, you know, there are sources for money for affordable housing, and the city isn't the ones that has all the money. Is it 2.6 million you guys have for that? A 51-unit complex is already underway, being developed. So, you know, I mean, I'm not going to change that. So afterwards, then I did have coffee with City Council Member Holstage, and I said, how can I help? I want to help, but I can see that, you know, I don't know how to write grants. So she was saying that really we need to attract builders. This is what they do. They build affordable housing. So I'm going to reach out as far and wide as I can to try to interest someone in our fine city in building affordable housing. The only thing I did come out of that with is thinking we should buy land with the 2.6 million. I did think that, because if we don't have the land, if we get the builders, and being in real estate day in, day out, I mean, Palm Springs is very popular right now, and we'll probably continue to do so. So I just hope that we can get a handle on this, and that we can provide affordable housing.
I just have a thought also for the mix, and I think maybe we can, and I'm not going to propose action right now, but I do think this could be a discussion topic for the retreat, and that would be in a lot of these areas, like we've already brought up the topic of ombudsman, or having staff available and resources to, well, the bottom line is we'll never have enough staff. We'll never have enough to do all the ombudsman's things. So my suggestion for us to think about and maybe discuss further at the retreat is how could we be training a lot of our lay citizens in some of the basic skills needed to support our various populations. Seniors, certainly, for sure, and it's probably our starting block. It could be others. I'm a former executive director of an organization that had 2,700 lay volunteers that were trained by 5 clinical psychologists, because there were not enough clinical psychologists to go around. So what did they do? These were not clinical psychologists, obviously. They aren't going to be trained by that in that type of environment. But they did learn a specific set of skills that could be documented so they, as lay people, could go out and serve the community. In this case, this was HIV support during the emotional support during the HIV crisis, L.A. Shanti. We were fielding 2,500 volunteers with direct one-on-one relationships. So that model has stuck with me for obvious reasons, and it's a big discussion to be had, and that's why I'm suggesting retreat. But I think that might have some real value, because if it's a volunteer resource, then of course the dollar thing does not become as horrendously big looking. So that's my thought.
Excellent. And I'd just like to encourage Commissioner Andrade and Randolph to continue going to those meetings and asking the council member representatives, ask the question, continue to ask the question, what is it specifically that the Human Rights Commission can assist the council member with? So let's find out from them how we can help them. And then your report back to us can give us some real meat on the bones that we can provide that support, or we could work on it to see if we can provide it. So please continue to do that, and thank you for the update. Okay, so I didn't skip anybody else. We're on to Desert Highland Gateway.
We'll be there tomorrow, at the meeting tomorrow.
Okay. Homelessness Task Force, Commissioner Andrade.
There hasn't been a meeting to report on.
Okay, beautiful. Excellent report. Main Street, Palm Springs, no human relations specific activities. 1PS, Commissioner Gross.
I actually have a little snippet for you. The big project at 1PS now is 1PS in conjunction with the city has formally announced that Palm Springs will host NUSA next year. NUSA is Neighborhoods USA, and it is a U.S. organization of cities, or the organizations within cities that support neighborhood involvement, not unlike our own ONI or office here in Palm Springs. So that will be next year, May 15 through 18. And Jill Sky suggests that also go on the master calendar, just so we're aware of that in our planning.
May
but
15 to 18?
Yeah, May 15 through 18, 2019. And the other thing, I would say if we have time at the retreat, I don't know if this has to be top of the agenda, but if we had time, I think we should try and strategize of how or if or what we do to connect with that. Because there'll be lots of visibility, there'll be lots of tours, and there will also be a lot to learn from that group. So I'm just putting that out there as a thought piece, but the calendar thing is what it is.
Okay. Any suggestions that you may bring forward to the retreat would be helpful to keep
That's what,
keeping
yeah.
us focused. So think about it between now and then.
I will.
And that will be helpful. The Palm Springs Police Department LGBT Outreach Committee, nothing really specific human rights related, so I think we're good to go there.
When is that next meeting?
They are the third Thursday of the month, and or is it the second?
I attempted to follow up with the commissioner's inquiry, and there's been some staff changes.
Yeah.
Kosolov.
Not Kosolov.
Kovalov.
Kovalov.
Yeah. The dates were not yet firmed, so I wasn't able to.
Oh, okay.
Next Thursday, I think, is the next meeting, though.
Have they set the
yeah, that's the
regular
next
schedule?
scheduled meeting
Okay.
is next Thursday.
Where does it occur?
At police headquarters in one of the conference rooms.
Okay.
Now that they're under construction, it's whatever space is available, but it's at police department. Okay, on to topical newsworthy items. Anything else to add to updates? Anything
Measure
topical?
C was defeated.
Yes, big win.
Measure C was defeated.
Beautifully. Okay, next agenda items for the next meeting. I've got down 2 items, the student recruitment plan, senior expo, and do we have to have budget or?
No, I thought the coming out film.
Oh, yes, so what are we calling that?
3. I right now, the coming out film event. Yeah.
Okay, so we got 3 items, nothing else out of conversation that we missed? Beautiful, so we got those added. And any last comments?
How can we send in suggestions for what we should agendize for the retreat? Because I've been writing stuff all meeting long, so should that be to you or to you, Dale?
Would you like to be on the subcommittee to plan?
That's
with
fine.
Vice Chair Chappelle?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. We just have the new subcommittee on the retreat, and thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Beautiful. Okay, it's 6:58. Before we adjourn, I just want to note our first meeting going to 5 o'clock didn't seem to draw any additional people from the community based on the hour. Actually, it had fewer people attending, so I think we should take note of that as we continue to go forward. But normally we do have 1 or 2, folks just observing. So. We're adjourned at 6:59 for our next regular, is it going to be called a regular meeting?
It'll have to be.
Its next regular meeting is going to be a date not set in July. We're going to figure out that date and get it out and have it posted according to the proper schedules. And we will doodle everybody to pick that date. So thank you all. Appreciate all the input. Thank you.